known for many years, but we'd never worked together. And he was in a mood at that time. He says, I don't want to do any more violent pictures. I'm tired.
At the age of 94, Clint Eastwood unexpectedly opened up about certain people whom he absolutely does not wish to see at his own funeral. He said, I don't hold grudges against anyone. But there are a few people. If they were present at my funeral, I would consider that an insult. This remark was made during a private conversation with a young director just a few months before his 94th birthday. When asked again about it, Clint Eastwood straightforwardly identified 6 specific names. Among them was someone who once exploited national television to insinuate that he was promoting violence, which within less than 48 hours caused numerous brands to simultaneously cancel their sponsorship of his film. Another person directly attacked him, forcing him to walk away from an AFI tribute ceremony. And there was even one individual who went so far as to completely freeze the entire post-production budget of a film he had directed. So, who are these people? What exactly turned those who were once colleagues, who once clinked glasses with him in friendship, into such harsh and unforgiving adversaries? All of that will be revealed in today's video. Will be 1. Leonardo DiCaprio, an A-list star, but in Clint's eyes, nothing more than an arrogant brat. In 2010, when Warner Brothers announced the biopic project J. Edgar with Clint Eastwood in the director's chair, the entire film industry anticipated it would become a work of cinematic history, capturing a pivotal chapter of America with the skilled hands and professional ethics that had long defined Clint's career. Yet, few could have predicted that this very project would mark the beginning of a years-long Cold War between him and Leonardo DiCaprio, a man hailed as the Oscars' trump card, but who, in Clint's eyes, was nothing more than a flashy, hollow icon concealing the cold heart of an opportunist. In reality, Clint's original intent was to cast a relatively unknown actor with greater psychological depth to portray J. Edgar Hoover. Warner Brothers, however, still intoxicated by the success of Inception, insisted he cast Leonardo instead. They handed Clint a contract that left him no choice. Without Leo, the $58 million budget would be immediately slashed, and the film would lose global distribution. Clint protested fiercely, but ultimately found himself cornered. He later bitterly told journalist Ken McFarlane in 2014, "They didn't give me a choice. They handed me a golden shackle." That interview was later taken down by Rolling Stone due to studio pressure. From the very first days of filming, Clint felt the set was no longer a place for art, but had turned into a battlefield for media spectacle. Leonardo arrived with his own entourage, a stylist, a personal lighting specialist, and even a photographer dedicated to behind-the-scenes shots. Not long after, countless photos were leaked onto Just Jared and E! Online, portraying Leonardo as a multi-talented artist, describing him as guiding the veteran director on how to capture the character's psychological depth. What truly enraged Clint was not the photos, but the fact that just 3 weeks into shooting, Leonardo suddenly demanded a rewritten ending, claiming it needed to be broader, more multidimensional, in order to reflect the true complexity of Hoover. Clint flatly rejected the idea. In a leaked internal Warner Brothers email, Clint wrote, "The kid wants to turn everything into fakery, like some kind of stage play, and I am not about to become the director of a circus act." From that point on, tensions only escalated. Leonardo repeatedly delayed production under the excuse of taking emotional breaks, which pushed the schedule back by 21 days and drove costs up nearly $6.5 million, according to a leaked financial memo. The breaking point came when a heavily edited behind-the-scenes video surfaced on YouTube, showing Clint losing his temper and shouting, "Stop with all these ridiculous antics. This is not some drama school audition." Although the video was quickly taken down, it had already spread across Twitter, accompanied by the sarcastic caption, "Clint Eastwood can't control the new generation." A Variety investigation, May 2012, revealed that the anonymous account, which uploaded the clip, had an IP address matching the Leo Collective, a media company co-founded by DiCaprio's own agent. Clint did not retaliate with words, but with action. He demanded Leonardo be excluded from the Oscar campaign, drastically cut his presence from the international trailer, and instead shifted promotion towards supporting actors like Armie Hammer and Naomi Watts. The incident deeply divided Warner Brothers internally. One faction within the production team sided with Clint, denouncing Leo as a diva masquerading as a genius. Meanwhile, the marketing department fought back, arguing Clint was an outdated barrier standing in the way of creativity. Around the same time, Hollywood Life magazine published a 4-page feature praising Leo as the courageous artist who dared to stand up against artistic dictatorship. It was later discovered that the article had been sponsored content paid for by a company under Leo's management. Clint's disappointment did not stop there. In 2013, his daughter Francesca Eastwood was caught by paparazzi holding hands with Leonardo as the two left a restaurant in Beverly Hills. For Clint, this was utterly unacceptable, as he had always kept his family away from the media circus. The incident led to a heated argument, after which Francesca moved out for nearly a year. An anonymous source told Radar Online, "Clint has never forgiven anyone who hurt his family, and Leo crossed that ultimate line." The conflict reached its peak in 2016. When Leonardo received his Oscar nomination for The Revenant, television cameras caught the moment he glanced coldly toward the row where Clint was seated, before declaring in his acceptance speech, "I want to thank all the directors who gave me creative freedom, instead of binding me with the narrow-minded limitations of the old generation." That was the last time Clint Eastwood appeared at a major award ceremony. From that day forward, he quietly crossed Leonardo DiCaprio's name off every project over which he still held decision-making power. If Leo had once caused Clint to lose faith in the younger generation of artists, the next betrayal would cut even deeper. This time, from the man he once regarded as the last true gentleman of Hollywood, Tom Hanks. Later, Clint would bitterly confess, "I still can't believe a man like that could exist in Hollywood." 2. Tom Hanks. When America's Gentleman drove Clint Eastwood to walk out of his own tribute in fury, it is almost unbelievable that the very man Clint Eastwood once praised as the final embodiment of integrity on the silver screen would later become the one to make him abandon his own tribute ceremony in a storm of anger unprecedented in his long career. And that man, none other than Tom Hanks. The story began in 2015 when Clint personally chose Tom to play the lead role in Sully, a film about Captain Chesley Sullenberger, the pilot who carried out the emergency landing on the Hudson River. In the press, the two always spoke respectfully about each other. Yet, according to a lighting assistant who worked on the shoot in Atlanta, the tension between them was so thick it felt like the air was electrically charged. Tom repeatedly requested to reshoot scenes Clint had already approved, claiming he needed to shift the emotional energy. He even went so far as to alter his lines, direct fellow actors himself, and ignore the director's authority, something that had never once happened in any of Clint's productions. But the true betrayal came in September of that same year. Just 3 days before the table read for Clint's next project, The Crying Gun, he received a terse email from Tom's manager announcing that Tom would withdraw due to an unavoidable commitment with a major international streaming platform. 3 weeks later, the media discovered the truth. Tom had quietly signed an exclusive $22 million deal with Apple TV Plus. As a result, Clint lost over $1 million in deposits, and the project was frozen indefinitely for lack of an A-list star. Clint neither sued nor attacked Tom publicly. He simply canceled all related press events and decisively cut off contact. But the real storm erupted in June 2016 during Clint's Lifetime Achievement Tribute at the American Film Institute, AFI. Warner Brothers, suggested Tom, as the keynote speaker in hopes of mending the relationship. Yet when Tom stepped on stage, instead of delivering the approved tribute speech, he coldly declared, "Some Hollywood directors still think they're holding real guns in real life. But sorry, that era ended the day the last cowboy on the big screen switched to doing bank commercials." The room fell into stunned silence. A few awkward laughs rang out, but Clint's eyes were frozen. He rose to his feet and, amid still thundering applause, quietly walked out, leaving hundreds of colleagues and family members bewildered. The next morning, Variety ran a bold headline: "Clint Eastwood walks out of tribute. Tom Hanks humiliates legend on stage." Meanwhile, The Hollywood Reporter devoted an entire page to commentary with the stark tagline, "A towering shadow crushed by a polite smile." And that was only the tip of the iceberg. In March 2017, a short video leaked from Warner's internal system, showing Clint erupting in anger inside the editing room after discovering that a Sully scene had been recut without his permission. Slamming his hand on the table, he growled, "I don't direct films so others can dismiss my work and re-edit them however they please." According to a Deadline journalist, the leak's source was Tom's personal assistant, who had just been fired a week earlier for secretly photographing Clint's private notes on set. From then on, a silent war stretched on for 6 long years. Rumors circulated that Tom was behind the sudden wave of negative reviews appearing on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic for Clint's films like The Mule and Cry Macho. An anonymous reporter from The Wrap revealed, "We once received an email from an anonymous PR address offering us exclusive interview access with Tom for his Oscar campaign, on the condition that we publish a harshly negative review of Cry Macho. And the low blows did not stop there. In 2020, Radar Online released evidence that Tom had hired paparazzi to tail Francesca Eastwood, Clint's daughter, during her vacation in Malibu. A doctored photo of Francesca leaving a liquor store surfaced in the tabloids, captioned mockingly, "Hollywood's model family? Think again." Clint never made a public statement, but Warner insiders confirmed that he ordered Tom's entire team permanently banned from involvement in any of his future projects. By February 2021, Tom appeared on Good Morning America, seemingly emotional, as he said of Clint. "He and I were colleagues, and if there was ever anything that caused him pain, I'm sorry for not being more considerate." But only 3 days later, Esquire published a blunt interview with Tom, where he flatly declared, "Clint's old-fashioned conservative style should have been buried with the last century." The heaviest blow landed in 2023. Honor-bound, $100 million epic Clint had been developing for 9 years suddenly lost its Korean investors at the last minute. Deadline reported that Tom's media team had delivered a risk analysis to the investors, highlighting Clint's controversial remarks and branding him as a name no longer connected with the global, younger audience. After that disastrous meeting, trembling with fury, Clint smashed his whiskey glass and, staring straight at his assistant, forced out each word. "I have never hated anyone, but if I die, don't let him come near. I don't want the devil standing at the moment I leave this world." 3. John Wayne, the symbol of the old America that Clint wanted to bury, along with the past century. The third person Clint Eastwood placed on his blacklist was none other than John Wayne. However, this was not merely a matter of professional friction between two generations, but rather a long and bitter feud filled with schemes and animosity, one that stretched across nearly 2 decades. During all those years, the two men continually struck at each other with ruthless blows, at times so cruel that they seemed almost unbelievable. It all began in the late 1960s, when Clint Eastwood rose to prominence with his image as a cold, unflinching cowboy and a progressive filmmaking mindset. In stark contrast, John Wayne was still considered the last remaining emblem of old America, a man who placed absolute faith in God, guns, and traditional family values, and who regarded cinema as nothing more than a vehicle for preaching morality. The clash between them was not confined to artistic style alone. It was also evident in their words and in nearly every one of their public appearances. In 1970, during an interview with Esquire magazine, Clint stated bluntly, "Movies should not become a pulpit for preaching morality. They should reflect reality, even the harshest sides of it." That declaration was like a spark igniting a fuse. Almost immediately afterward, John Wayne retaliated on the Merv Griffin show, saying, "That kid is going to destroy the whole industry just to be seen as modern." The hostility only escalated further. At a 1971 tribute ceremony at Paramount Studios, when Wayne was invited to present Clint with the Breakthrough Artistic Contribution Award, he not only refused, but deliberately leaned into the live microphone and muttered, "I don't shake hands with hypocrites." His words reverberated through the hall, freezing the atmosphere into silence. Clint kept smiling, but inside, he had already begun plotting his revenge. Only a few weeks later, a storm of tabloid headlines erupted. Confidential Weekly ran with the headline, "Eastwood, Not Quite a Man," accompanied by secretly taken photos of him sitting too close to a male assistant backstage during The Beguiled. The media frenzy exploded. His endorsement and contract with Bulva Watches was canceled after just 3 days, and Warner Brothers was forced to postpone the re-release of Play Misty for Me. The press labeled it a midsummer ice slip. Years later, Robert Daniel, a former Variety reporter, admitted that John Wayne's own PR team had deliberately leaked the photos and fabricated the story to the media. The fallout was devastating. Clint's wife left to stay at her mother's house for 3 months. His agent, Mike Halberts, later recalled during a private AFI meeting, "That was the only time Clint ever asked me, if I disappear from Hollywood, will anyone even remember me?" Clint did not let the matter slide. In his 1973 film High Plains Drifter, he created a villain named Marshall Wayne, a hypocritical, tyrannical liar who is ultimately burned alive by the entire town. Critics immediately understood that this was one of the most vicious cinematic acts of revenge Hollywood had ever seen. John Wayne was furious to the point of boiling rage, yet he still refused to stop. In 1975, an open letter signed by him appeared in the New York Times, publicly condemning those who are dragging Hollywood into the arms of atheism and depravity. Although he never mentioned names directly, around the same time, an internal Poitier document was leaked, showing Clint Eastwood's name with the note, "Personal life needs review." Rumors swirled in Hollywood that Wayne was behind it all. The conflict reached its peak in 1978 when Clint was preparing his project Bronco Express with an $8 million budget from Lorimar. Right before filming was to begin, the entire post-production budget was inexplicably frozen. It was not until 1992 that the truth surfaced. Wayne had secretly called the studio's president and warned, "No conservative theater will ever screen that guy's movie if you fund it." The final blow came when Wayne hired paparazzi to tail Clint during his vacation in Italy, then spread the rumor that he had fathered an illegitimate child with an Italian actress. A complete fabrication. Clint considered filing a lawsuit, but ultimately chose silence and went on shooting Honky Tonk Man. From that moment on, however, John Wayne had forever lost even the slightest chance of being afforded Clint's respect. That is why, in Clint's list of those who are not allowed to attend my funeral, John Wayne's name, despite having already passed away, still stood at the very top. For Clint, it was simply about protecting authenticity, refusing to let any shadow of falseness taint his legacy. And the next name on Clint's list of those who disrespected him, this time not merely with words, but with hypocrisy cloaked as righteousness, was Michael Moore. 4. Michael Moore, the documentary filmmaker who irritates everyone. If there is anyone capable of making Clint Eastwood lose his usual composure, it is not a fellow movie star or a rival director, but Michael Moore, the documentary guy, who wields a camera with the ambition to shake up the entire Hollywood industry. People often say that Moore is the relentless headache of conservative politicians, but to Clint, He resembles a stain that can never be washed away. Moore does not just criticize bluntly. He also employs petty, underhanded tactics that gradually erode Clint's faith in the art he has devoted his life to. It all began with nothing more than a clash of opinions. In 2005, Moore announced his project, Hollywood's Gun, a documentary that claimed it would expose the glorified violence embedded in American cinema. On the first poster, amidst a collage of firearms, appeared Clint Eastwood's cold, steely face from Dirty Harry, his hand gripping a gun tightly, his gaze blazing. The message was unmistakably clear. Moore was targeting the very symbol named Clint. Eastwood remained silent. He never cared much about attacks, and he paid even less attention to documentary filmmakers. But Moore did not stop. On CBS Sunday Morning, he boldly declared, "Hollywood has created an entire generation that believes that all it takes is a gun and a cold face to solve everything. And Eastwood is the one who pioneered that formula." The accusation spread like wildfire across the media. Gun control organizations began sending letters to pressure studios to reconsider funding Clint's projects. That was the first shot, accurate and deeply wounding. But the tragedy had only just begun. A few weeks later, Moore released a clip from his unfinished documentary, a scene of Clint drawing a gun in Gran Torino, juxtaposed with real footage of 3 school shootings in Ohio, Texas, and Florida. Only 5 brief seconds, yet enough to strike straight at the hearts of the public. The hashtag #HatDirtyIcon quickly went viral on social media. Within 72 hours, 3 major brands, including a car company previously involved with $1 Million Baby, simultaneously announced they were withdrawing from Clint's new film promotional campaign. And as if Moore had planned it all along, a former assistant director appeared in an interview, claiming that Clint had once yelled at a supporting actor, "A punch in the face can change a man's life, as long as he learns to live like a real man." The rumor spread rapidly. Without a shred of evidence, publications from Variety to HuffPost repeated it as if it were undeniable fact. Numerous articles analyzed that Clint Eastwood was the one who had sown toxic masculinity in American cinema. In 2010, precisely 1 day before Hereafter was to premiere nationwide, Moore filed a complaint with the MPAA, requesting a review of the film's rating on the grounds that the drowning scene could cause psychological trauma to minors. And although the request was denied, the consequence was a 3-week delay in the release schedule, right during the peak of the Thanksgiving season. Warner Brothers immediately terminated Clint's priority distribution contract, forcing him to spend over $3.2 million of his own money to complete post-production on his next project. It was a crippling blow that Clint would never forget. What was even more cruel was not the courts, but Hollywood itself turning its back. After that incident, many young directors refused to collaborate with him. An A-list actor, originally slated for the lead role in Clint's new film, suddenly withdrew for a mere 5-word reason: "Because I still have to live." Clint remained silent. But according to a longtime assistant, from that point on, he locked down all projects, revealing no content and sending no early drafts. He no longer trusts anyone. By 2015, an anonymous hacker leaked a recording between Michael Moore and a journalist from The Nation. In it, Moore said, "I don't hate Clint. I just hate the way he makes American men believe they don't need to think. They just have to pull the trigger, and everything is solved." The statement appeared on the cover of Rolling Stone. Twitter erupted in fierce debate and division. A veteran critic wrote, "Clint may be a legend, but Moore is the one rewriting that legend." The climax occurred in 2023. At the Hollywood Legends Award ceremony in Beverly Hills, Clint Eastwood appeared in a sharp gray suit. But after only 3 minutes, he left the auditorium, leaving hundreds of guests stunned. 2 days later, the press revealed that Michael Moore had been invited as a secret special guest. Clint discovered this 15 minutes before the event and quietly told his assistant, "If I stand on the same stage with him, everything I have believed in for 60 years will mean nothing." And he walked away, never to appear publicly again. In Clint Eastwood's eyes, Michael Moore is not just a detestable director, but a saboteur who used the power of the media to shake an entire icon. In Clint's family black book, there is a list of names not allowed to attend the farewell. Right next to Moore's name, a glaring red X and a scrawled note in Clint's own handwriting read, "Betrayer of Art." 5. Spike Lee, the man who publicly attacked Clint over racial issues. Among the list of individuals that Clint Eastwood had once sworn he would never overlook, there was one name that alone could make him frown coldly: Spike Lee. That African-American director was both a symbol of resistance and the person who forced Clint to confront the thing he despised most: accusations of harboring racist attitudes. They were not only different in skin color, but also stood on opposite ends of Hollywood's moral spectrum. On one side, America's most conservative elder, and on the other, the one daring to speak out and awaken consciences. The conflict erupted at the Cannes Film Festival in 2008, when Clint had just presented 2 war films, Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima. The pair of films were lauded by critics as a deeply humanistic epic of heroism. Yet during a press conference attended by hundreds of journalists and television cameras, Spike Lee suddenly launched an attack. It seems that during World War II, black soldiers didn't exist in the eyes of certain directors. He did not explicitly name anyone, but everyone understood who he was targeting. The remark was immediately printed in full on The Guardian's front page, while the New York Times devoted an entire feature dissecting the absence of black representation in American war films. The wound, seemingly still raw, was ripped open again in public view. And Clint, reading these words on the plane back to Los Angeles, slammed the newspaper onto the table and growled through tightly controlled anger, "I will never allow anyone to rewrite my history." A week later, he responded in an interview with Esquire magazine with a tone of irony. "If they want me to make political films, let them go vote. As for me, I tell the story in my own way." From that moment, an unannounced war began between the two, without guns or bullets, yet fierce through words, media, and behind-the-scenes maneuvers. Spike Lee never stopped. When American Sniper was released in 2014, he bluntly wrote on Twitter, "A glorification of a white killer." Within just 24 hours, the tweet had been shared over 200,000 times. Few knew that simultaneously, Spike also sent Warner Brothers a 3-page letter requesting the film's screenings be limited in areas with large African American populations such as South Chicago, Detroit, and Baltimore. Not stopping there, he personally met with 3 Middle Eastern investors who had previously funded Clint's films to persuade them to find more ethical partners. Clint was fully aware of everything, and he did not overlook it. Leveraging his network cultivated over more than 60 years in Southern Hollywood, he quietly influenced theater chains in Texas, Louisiana, and Georgia, conservative states, leading to the cancellation of numerous screenings for Chi-Raq and Duff 5 Bloods. As a result, Spike's Wonderful's revenue that fall dropped by nearly 40%. No official confirmation was ever made, but in a private meeting at Malpaso Productions, a producer openly stated, "I don't need to intervene directly, just suggesting that I'm displeased is enough." And Clint simply nodded. The conflict reached its peak in 2021, when an audio recording from a private Malpaso meeting was leaked. The clip spread rapidly on Twitter, featuring Clint's deep, gravelly voice clearly saying, "Spike lives off hatred. He doesn't make films, he just throws trash onto the screen." Instantly, the hashtag boycott Eastwood surged to the top 3 nationwide trending topics overnight. 3 brands sponsoring Clint's upcoming documentary project withdrew their funding within 72 hours. Meanwhile, Spike appeared as an MSNBC in the stance of a righteous warrior, holding a printed copy of the statement before the cameras and declaring decisively, "This is exactly why I exist. I am here to remind them that history is never written solely by white hands." The war continued silently, but left countless scars. In 2022, Spike released the documentary The White Lens, deeply exploring how Hollywood portrays white people as heroes in every war. In it, Clint's works, American Sniper, Gran Torino, Flags of Our Fathers, were repeatedly cited as illustrative examples over subtly suggestive music, though never mentioned by name. Clint did not respond publicly. However, according to The Wrap, he refused to serve on the 2023 Oscar jury if Spike Lee's name was included. "I won't sit at the same table with a hypocrite," he told an Academy member. Yet the next name on that list caused him even more pain. It belonged to someone who had once sat beside him at the Oscar banquet, someone who had called him a kindred spirit, only to turn her back in full view of the stage lights and countless eyes. Faye Dunaway, a legendary actress with a steel-strong ego and a grudge list even longer than her illustrious cinematic career. 6. Faye Dunaway, the woman who held a grudge against almost half of Hollywood. In the 1970s, at the peak of her career, Faye Dunaway was hailed as the queen without a throne of cinema. She possessed eyes sharp as blades, a voice that resonated like a declaration of war, and a demeanor that left Hollywood men both captivated and cautious. Yet beyond the rounds of applause and public admiration, few knew, or perhaps no one dared mention, that she had caused more than 6 directors to abandon projects, at least 4 assistants to quit from mental exhaustion, and for nearly a decade, 2 major studios had quietly placed her on a blacklist. Faye was not merely a star. She was like a storm that anyone would need to consider carefully before daring to invite her onto a project. Clint Eastwood once remarked at a private press conference at Burbank Studios in 1996, "Faye has the ability to turn a calm shooting day into a backstage coup." The Los Angeles Times later cited this statement in an article exposing the behind-the-scenes disaster of Sundown Valley, a dramatic film that both Clint and Faye co-directed and co-produced, only to witness its collapse after just 9 days of shooting in the Napa Valley. According to a disclosure from an anonymous assistant director, allegedly someone who worked with both of them on Unforgiven, the conflict began over what seemed to be a minor request. Faye wanted her character, an elderly mother nearing death, to have a monologue exceeding 4 minutes on the fear of time. Clint, known for his strictness and minimalist approach, bluntly rejected it. Nobody buys a ticket to the theater just to hear a long, self-pitying speech. Faye did not respond immediately, but within a night, the entire crew received an email from her manager accusing Clint of publicly displaying gender discrimination and requesting that lawyers review the ethical clauses in the contract. Within 48 hours, the situation escalated to an uncontrollable level. On April 13, 1996, during a nighttime shoot in Sonoma, Faye abruptly demanded that all cameras stop rolling and declared that she was being psychologically terrorized by a dictatorial management style. Almost simultaneously, Variety published an exclusive article with the headline, "Clint Eastwood, the man who cannot work with powerful women." The article cited a close source claiming that Clint had displayed subtle threats during morning meetings. The studio immediately launched an internal investigation. In the production office, Clint, renowned for his calm demeanor, smashed a wine glass in front of the executives and growled, "This will be the last time I work with an ego bigger than the script." But Faye did not stop there. She hired a team of paparazzi from England to follow Clint for 10 days, capturing images of him at a boxing gym in San Francisco and selling them to the Daily Mirror. Instantly, the cover featured the headline, "Clint Eastwood, powerful director or brutal man who loves fists." Furthermore, The Guardian later revealed that Faye had secretly hired a PR firm in New York to redefine Clint's masculine image as outdated, regressive, and misogynistic. Although no legal charges were ever filed, the consequences were severe. The project was canceled. Clint lost nearly $5 million of his own investment, and thereafter, every film contract he signed included a special clause: no collaboration with FD under any circumstances. The climax of the conflict, as well as the irreparable fracture, occurred at the 2005 Cannes Film Festival. Both Clint and Faye were invited as honorary jurors, but an internal document leaked revealed that Clint had sent a handwritten letter requesting separate seating arrangements, no shared transport, no joint appearances on stage. And when asked why, he wrote in blue ink, "For the honor of American cinema, I will withdraw from any event where she is present." True to form, Faye did not miss the opportunity to retaliate. On the red carpet, in front of media cameras, when asked about Clint, she curled her lips in a sarcastic smile and said, "We are different. One believes that the depth of the inner self is the soul of the character. The other thinks every problem can be solved with guns." This remark quickly became a viral quote in the film industry that year and served as the last straw that drove Clint Eastwood to leave Cannes just 6 hours after landing, missing the premiere of his close friend Sergio Leone Jr.'s film, a man who had once called him my childhood hero. In 2007, at a private party in Beverly Hills, when Clint heard that Faye had been awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award by the French Academy, he only slightly raised his lips in a smile, lifted his glass, and whispered to a close friend, "If she dares show up at my funeral, I will jump up, snatch the microphone, and shout, 'Get out of here immediately.'" Later, Don Siegel Jr., a director and longtime friend of Clint, recounted this remark in an interview with Esquire, adding, "I have never seen Clint this vindictive, and I believe he meant every word seriously." Since then, the name Faye Dunaway has always been highlighted in red on every logistical assignment sheet at Clint's Productions. No one denies that she is a legendary talent, but she is also the only person who ever caused Clint to abandon a film mid-production, become entangled in an honor investigation, and leave Cannes quietly. After all the glittering spotlights, the glories, and the dazzling awards, we finally come to realize a truth. Hollywood is not merely the capital of cinema. Hidden behind that glamorous facade, it is also an underground battlefield without a single gunshot, a place where grudges can smolder and persist for decades. And can you guess what is truly terrifying? It is that, among the list of people Clint Eastwood once considered traitors, there are some who were once his close friends, others who were even his daughter's lovers. And there are even names that, to this very day, the media goes to great lengths to conceal, keeping them out of the public eye. If you find this video genuinely captivating, remember to hit the like button. Share it with anyone who shares the same passion for cinema as you. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other shocking secrets from behind the scenes of Hollywood, stories that the press has never dared to reveal.